Don't you just hate it when your opponent goes for a forward castle right in your face and completely disrupts your economy, prevents you from expanding, and makes it a pain to move your units around without taking damage from all that castle fire? Well, it's a very strong strategy and a very popular one at that. So in this video, I'm going to teach you guys how to defend against a forward castle when it happens to you in a real game. Let's hop right in and check it out. Alright, so before we talk about how to defend against such a strategy, we have to first understand how much it takes as far as an investment goes from your opponent to do a forward castle in your base. The idea is that a castle costs 650 stone on paper, assuming no eco bonuses of course, but we also have to factor in the walking time that your opponent has to commit to from his base all the way over to your base, as well as how many villages he's using, and then finally the actual build time of the castle. I'm not going to get into the details of the exact numbers, but if you're committing like 10 villages forward, which is, I would say, the average or like the minimum average that you want to send for a forward castle to ensure it goes up quickly. That's a ton of idle time to walk 10 villas from his base all the way across the map and then also have to build the forward castle. So it's not only the 650 stone up front, but it's also all that walking and idle time that the villagers have to put in to actually commit to this forward castle. And for that reason, he's going to be giving up a lot of other things like resource gather rates and being able to field a lot of military when he does this kind of approach. All right, so we can tell it's a pretty hefty investment just from thinking about it logically. Now, what are the best ways that we can respond to this kind of approach if your opponent decides to go for a forward castle? What should you do? Well, there's a few things that you want to think about right away, and you have to pick one of the 4 strategies that I'm going to present to you guys today. The downside of this kind of situation, this kind of game, is that you have to think quick. If your opponent goes for a forward castle, you don't have a lot of time to react. You have to kind of pick your approach right away, because if you start debating between approaches, you're going to lose valuable time, and it just takes a few seconds for him to get the castle up, and then it becomes a very hard game if you don't already have a plan in mind. Alright, so the first and best way to stop a forward castle is to literally stop the forward castle. Don't let him get it up in front of your base. The reason this is actually a really good approach is that you have defender's advantage, meaning your production buildings will be closer to the place where the castle is going down. So in theory, you should be able to have more military and more production close by to be able to win the fight that occurs near the forward castle and potentially stop his villagers from getting it down. There's a couple things that you can do to help you make sure the castle doesn't go up, like doing a counter castle with more villages than he sends forward so that your castle will go up first and kill the villages he has that are building it. You can also just go for the bring all your army to that spot, take a big fight, and hope to win it approach. And in theory, you should have more army. However, in practice, sometimes your army is going to be scattered and you're not going to be able to get them there in time. So make sure you're making the right judgment call based on the situation. But if you can stop it, you always should. The only downside to this approach is the fact that if you think you can, but in reality you couldn't stop it, what ends up happening is that you overcommit to trying to stop it, and then the castle goes up because you couldn't do it, and then you wasted all that extra resources taking a bad fight or making a castle that doesn't end up stopping it, or whatever the case may be. Whatever you invested into it doesn't end up working, and so you've lost now the investment that you put into stopping it, as well as the fact that now you still have to deal with the castle being up in your base. The other downside, and this is not exactly a downside, but it could be a downside, is that if both castles end up going up, it turns usually into a petard war, and that could be a good thing or a bad thing depending on the situation. So make sure you're ready for that outcome as well. Of course, if you do overcommit to a certain castle going up and you misjudge the situation, you end up taking a bad fight, don't be afraid to just pull out and reassess the situation if you didn't know how much army he had, or if there was a factor that you didn't quite consider before taking the engagement or before deciding for this approach. So this approach, although it requires an investment from you, it requires action from you, it's not irreversible. Oftentimes you can try to stop it, realize you probably can't halfway through, and then just pull back and cut your losses. So keep that in mind, of course, when deciding for this approach. Should the castle be stopped, all you have to do afterwards is just wall the base of the castle or keep units nearby to protect it so that he can't send forward villagers and finish it later. And that is of course the best outcome, because you kill all of his villagers, you kill whatever army he had to protect it, and then you prevent the castle from going up. The game should be completely over at this point, assuming you guard the castle and you don't let him get it up afterwards. Alright, so the second strategy you can do, or the second response to a forward castle, in my opinion, my favorite, because it's the most consistent, is to simply go up to Imp and get a castle of your own at a safe distance away from his castle, so around 10 or 12 tiles, or any tile that you can get like some trebs out and then use the trebs to kill the castle without him really being in range to kind of fight you off. There are a couple small downsides to this technique, and one being he can actually all-in castle and punish your fast imp if you don't do it correctly. So it takes a lot of thought and it takes a lot of strategical preparation to make sure you can get away with Imperial Age and a castle of your own safely. And the other downside is that sometimes you won't be able to access stone because his castle is coming down on your stone. So if that's the case, you literally just can't go imp and get your own castle. You're gonna have to take a different approach and try to play it out from there. So keep that in mind whenever thinking of this approach of going up to imp and getting a castle of your own to trap it down. The biggest upside of this approach, in my opinion, is that if I have a safe stone in the back, I can concede the initial ground that he has his castle around, get my own castle, which is a really good defender against any follow-up push that he has with his forward castle. And generally speaking, my economy should be better because of all that idle time he used to bring his villages forward. Also, if we're both up to imp around the same time, it becomes a treb war and I have defender's advantage. So any units I make will be right on the battlefield, whereas he has to reinforce from his base or commit to more forward production buildings. Alright, so those are the two best approaches, but there's a couple more strategies we can implement or things to know whenever we're dealing with a forward castle. And this third tip is more or less, we're starting to concede a little bit. This is when you can't do either one or two on the list. So we have to move out of the way at this point. We can't fight, we can't go up to imp, we can't make a defensive castle. At this point, the best thing we can do is simply move our economy out of the way from whatever place he drops the forward castle, and we have to cut our losses as much as possible. If the castle is going to go up, we need to make sure we have as strong as possible a position to be able to play even with that forward castle still being in our face or in our base somewhere. So the best thing to do is to move your economy, make sure there's no villagers nearby so the castle goes up and kills them, and then move and relocate to another part of the map. Feel free to expand towards the sides of the map now, because if your opponent is going for a forward castle, usually they don't have that much military to cut off your expansion as well. If they do, they're miles ahead, you're probably going to lose anyways. Usually if it's a pretty balanced game, they go for a forward castle, that's their push. They don't have a lot else follow up right away. So make sure you're expanding to the sides and finding other places where your villagers can work in peace. And then from this position, we're going to look to counterattack if we still have some army nearby, and just play, generally speaking, around or away from the castle. We don't want to take any fights near the castle. We don't want to have any economy near the castle. If we've got any buildings there, we'll just let him kill the buildings slowly. If we can still produce from the buildings, we just produce and run them away from the castle. It's very tricky to play this, and the biggest downside to always resorting to this is that sometimes you won't actually have the tempo to be able to, expand and then also counterattack. Sometimes the forward castle push is simply too strong and you're gonna get completely crushed from his push. So keep it in mind that this is really just a strategy or a line of thinking to implement when you don't have the option to stop the castle or to go imp and get your own castle to trap it down. Alright, one last tip I'm forced to mention, but I actually hate this approach because I think it rarely works, and this is to try to take the castle down in Castle Age with rams and a lot of Castle Age units. Now, the reason I don't like this approach is because taking down castles in Castle Age is actually extremely difficult to do. You need a number of rams, they're extremely slow to get towards the base of the castle, they're very easy to kill with villagers, any melee unit that he might have. He can even make petards from the castle and use the petards to kill the rams when they're at the base of the castle. And in general, Castle Age rams don't do a lot of damage, so if he's repairing the castle, it's going to make it all the more hard to take it down. And overall, it just feels like the worst approach to take because it takes a lot of commitment, a lot of investment from you, and a lot of things can go wrong. And should this go wrong, you're going to completely lose the game because he's going to still have the castle up and you're going to have lost a lot of your units as well as all those rams invested to try to take it down. Now, it's not all bad though. The reason I still have this approach on the list is sometimes they'll make the forward castle and they won't make any units to defend it. And so in this case, just a few rams and a few knights or whatever other cavalry unit you can afford, or melee unit, even infantry can play a big role with the rams like pikes or longswords. It could be a really good approach to kill the castle, punish him for not making any military to protect it, and then you can push from there using the army you already used to kill the castle. But it does have a lot of downsides and it gives a lot of counterplay to your opponent. So keep that in mind whenever thinking of taking down the Castle Age, or taking down the castle, in Castle Age with rams. Alright guys, that's gonna do it for this video. If I missed anything that could be useful when dealing with forward castles, please let me know in the comments below. I'm only one person, I've got my tips and tricks, but I'm sure I don't know everything there is to know when it comes to dealing with such a strategy. So of course, feel free to let me know your feedback as well on the video, and also if there's anything that I missed, or if you have any other tips to defend against the strategy. It's always lovely to hear your input, and I love to see different approaches all the time. So thanks for watching the video. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys next time. See ya.